if you've ever used DWM, you've been editing your config file and you wanted to modify what your key bindings are. You probably want to associate some key bindings with some applications, right? And you would be using the spawn function that DWM provides. For example, one of the default key bindings here is to open the ST terminal browser. We have this term command, which is then put into as an argument here with the spawn function. But what does the spawn function actually do? Let's look at dwm.c to see what it actually does. So here we have the actual spawn function. You can see the term command is taken in as an arg argument. Well, what is a type arg? It is actually defined in this file. It is a type def union between signed integers, unsigned integers, floating points, and a void pointer. But if we go back to the spawn function, you can see where arg is actually used, and it is only using the void pointer type in the type union. So let's go line by line through this spawn function. These first two lines just have to do with if the command is the dmenu command. It has some special things it wants to do, but we're going to ignore that for this video. What I want to talk about is how it forks the processes, which is a pretty standard thing in when you're doing any sort of programming that involves multiple processes, right? So it calls the fork system call. And what that does is after this line of code is called, there will be two programs running. One is the parent process, that is the original program, and there will be the child process that was just created. But both will be starting from this line, right? However, this if statement is if the return of fork is equal to 0. So for the parent process, it will not be returning 0, because 0 indicates that it is a child process. The child process, of course, will return 0, so we know that all this code inside this if statement here is all for the child process. Only the child process is going to run that. And so then what it does, it uses this set SID, which then creates a new session for this process. And then it uses this exec VP function, putting in the argument into it. And so what this is doing is it is executing whatever file program or whatever program file that we were passing in. So in the case of the term command, the argument is st. And so it will find the st program because it is included in the system path, and then it will then execute it. If it successfully finds st inside the system path and executes it, the st program will overwrite the DWM program for this process, and effectively this code stops, right? But let's say you don't have st installed in your system, or your pathing is messed up. Then it will fail and continue on. So all this code down here is with the assumption that the program you are executing failed. So st failed to start up in this case. So then it'll print out some error messages. It'll say DWM, exec VP, and then the program name, in this case it would be st, right? And then it would say that it failed. And then it would say exit success. And this is all printing it to the standard error stream. And that's all that spawn does. It's a very simple thing. It just creates a new session, executes a function, and does some error handling. But if you think about it, this is kind of the most fundamental thing that you'll be doing. If you're running DWM, you're opening new windows, this is what's happening every single time. Every time you use a key binding, every time you say, something that most people do is bind their, web browser to to some key. I have mine bound to super B, right? So every time I open a browser, every time I open my terminal, this spawn function is being executed. A child process is being created, and the system can then handle it from there. Yeah, and so I hope you learned something. If you want to learn more about how forking and how systems handle processes, I encourage you to look up and read some articles about it. It's very fascinating, especially since a lot of programmers just think about their single program, but as a whole, there's so many different processes being run at the same time. They're doing context switching, all this other complicated stuff. I really encourage you to check it out.